And here we are live, the two grumpiest weather people on the face of the earth, like two old tubes of toothpaste. We're just laying there, Crest to my left, Colgate in front of you. It's Joe and Joe on the Joe and Joe Weather Show.
I know exactly where you got that analogy, that metaphor.
I know, I read through that conversation. God, I've been called many things in my life, but an old tube of toothpaste, that's a new one for me.
Well, that's basically how the broadcast industry is. Once they're done with you, that's it,
Oh,
right?
yeah, they just toss you out like yesterday's newspaper.
They squeeze every little bit out of you, and then that's you're done.
But they are no longer doing that, Mr. Rayo. They are no longer squeezing anything from either of us. We are,
Really?
yes, we are
Well, I
squeezing.
mean, yeah, that's right.
Right.
They're not doing anything to us anymore.
No, we're squeezing ourselves, and that's different.
Yeah,
That's a whole different ball game.
per, uh, absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
One of these
We
days, one of these days, we should. Unfortunately, I mean, we have no. You and I have no fear. We could bring on some of our former colleagues and have a nice, long, honest conversation. I don't know how what it would get us other than in
well,
trouble, but yeah, we should try that one day. I'm sure
yeah,
the audience would enjoy it.
I'm sure they would. Well, I'm not sure whether or not the our former colleagues would like to air their dirty laundry like they do off air,
No, well,
but
they may still have a career ahead of them.
yeah, yeah.
All
Well, I
right,
told
so
you I was on 57 minutes before the start time of this show tonight. There were about 4 or 5 people already waiting. I love how they wait for us, even
they
like an hour in
do.
advance.
We had 40 people. We had 40 people in here right before the show started.
And I said the theme of tonight's show is depression.
Well, yeah,
We have two of them
two
out
of
there
them.
tonight.
Yes,
Yeah.
so we're going to do all things tropical. It's going to be, I have to tell you, very challenging forecast ahead for both of these systems because, frankly, there's a lot of variables for both of them. And Nick Panico, who's a weather chaser, pointed out on Facebook on a post that I saw today that it is possible, and this is only because it's 2020 that this is going to happen.
Right.
Next, well, Monday or Tuesday, but let's say next Tuesday, if the Hurricane Center's forecasts are correct, we could have two landfalling tropical cyclones in the United States at the same time on the same day,
Isn't that
and that
amazing?
and that has not happened. That's only happened, according to him, one other time, and it was on September the 3rd or the 4th. I think it was the 4th of 1933. So if
Wow.
there was going to be a year where you're going to have two landfalling tropical cyclones on the same day at the same time on the U.S. mainland, and an exceedingly rare event, 2020 it would be is the way the year has gone. This is the perfect year for it.
If you in fact, there's one graphic. Yeah, are you already on at NHC?
I have all the NHC graphics, the maps up.
The one that really tells the whole story is the tropical storm force wind speed probabilities, where you have both systems seemingly, coming together right along the
Okay.
Gulf
Well,
Coast.
we'll pull it up. I'll have to look for it. When we get to it, direct me if I can't seem to find it. All right.
Right.
So we do have two tropical depressions, of course. We have Tropical Depression 13, which is the system east of the Leeward Islands. And there's a whole slew of tropical storm watches that are up already, including for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. And we have Tropical Depression 14 in the Caribbean, which had started getting better organized late yesterday and overnight. And I wonder whether that may wind up becoming a tropical storm first before the one that's east of the islands, because that looks a little bit elongated on the satellite loop. But let's go through all of this because it's odd, Joe. When I was looking at the upper air, the track forecasts for both those storms seem fairly straightforward, but they involve the potential for both of them to go over land once or twice at some point in their cycle, which makes the intensity forecast really difficult, if not impossible. And yet, at the same time, I noticed looking at the upper air profiles and the lack of wind shear that is over both systems, they both should have an opportunity to strengthen into minimal hurricanes. Now, whether they get there or not is really going to depend on whether they move over any of the land masses.
Yes. Hello?
Yes, I'm here. No, especially 13, which may has the opportunity to cross Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and Cuba in one swoop, and that those mountains could rip those systems could rip that system apart.
Correct. Correct. And then we were talking about that yesterday, and it would make for a long, hard haul, whichever name that particular system ends up being. I mean, we're not even sure which one is going to get named first, whether it's going to be um, oh my goodness,
Whether
all
it's
the
going
names.
to be 13, 14, or 14.
It's not Nana. It's Laura.
Laura, Marco, and Nana.
And yeah.
By the way, here's a question. I was thinking about this. Is it Laura or is it Laura?
Oh, please. Yeah,
because if it's Italian or Spanish, for example, it would be Laura.
Okay.
I am posing the question. That's all. I'm just wondering if it's which one it is.
And actually, there's a woman's name in Spanish, Lauda, but that has a D in it, so we'll skip that.
All right, so we know that's not it. All right, so I've got the satellite loop up, and you can clearly see what's going on here with respect to our weather systems. So just so everybody knows, this one is 14. This one is 13.
I am 14, going on 13.
And this one is a strong tropical wave that has moved off the African coast south of the Cabo Verde Islands, and that may have a future down the road as well. Now, a couple of observations that, from what I can see, Joe, the 13 east of the Leewards, it is elongated. It's still this elongated north-south stretched out system. So I'm trying to gauge, looking at the loop, there's a couple of things here. It looks like there's some dry air and maybe even some Saharan dust right in this zone that could be getting involved in the circulation, and maybe that's why this thing is having a little bit of trouble organizing. But there seems to be a fairly decent core of thunderstorms there, so we'll see what happened. There's an Air Force reconnaissance aircraft that was there a little while ago, and we'll look at some of the obs. Meanwhile, take a look at this with the system in the Caribbean. In the last several hours on the loop, and I got a tight loop of this thing somewhere. I just have to find it. The convection near the center has really bubbled up quite strongly. And here it is. I got on, this is the, let's see, I make sure I got the right one. 60, no, this is 13. So 13 on the water vapor loop, still getting some bursts of convection going on. So that is, we'll see what the Hurricane Center does with that. And here's 14. Now, on the loop with this one, and it's a floater loop, so when you see it jump around, it's because the picture's designed to keep the center of the storm in the center of the picture. Take a look, Joe. There's like this bursting of convection that went on. I'll add a few extra frames so we could see it a bit better. So let's go. Wait. There we go. 36 frames on here. And you see the convection that blows up in the last few hours and gets pulled in right where the center is. So I'm thinking that this may wind up becoming a tropical storm first. Also, the other thing, Joe, look at the feathering of the cirrus on the outer edges. So there's some very good outflow here.
Right. And you can see this. Is that an eye that's trying to form? Maybe it's not.
No, it closes. The development stage, there wasn't much going on in the center, so it looks like it's kind of just trying to tighten itself up a little bit.
Right.
But I think the look the look of this to me seems a bit more developed than the system that's out to the east. So this one may wind up going first with regards to development. And I'm going to go back to this shot and change it to the geo color so we can see the actual clouds. Now it's nighttime out there, and we'll let the loop load. So it's kind of a bold, it's a balled up area of convection. The Hurricane Center noted in their discussion that uh, uh, it looked like the surface center may have gotten ran out to the west and got a bit exposed, but there might be several centers here, so it could very well just may wind up consolidating into another center. But we're still also seeing convection kind of bursting here with this one as well. So the race is on.
As to who is going to get named for.
Correct.
Oh, they could also name them simultaneously and at the same time.
They certainly could. So I'm going to go to the aircraft Recon and see what we got. So this one is the status on this one is in the system. So the reconnaissance aircraft is there right now. The lighter greens on here are 40 to 45 knots. So there are gales going on about, well, I'm trying to, they haven't really closed off a center yet. I'm seeing, southeast winds, southeast, and southeast still where they are. There's actually one yellow wind barb on the flight between 45 and 50. So there are some gales going on here. But let's see what happens after they close it off, close off a center, so they could give us a good indication of what this thing is doing. And I'll pull up. This chart's usually pretty good to look at. They plot the flight level winds on its path, and you see the flight level winds up here above 40 knots that they've reported in the last hour or so. Then there's a big drop off for wherever they were on the flight, and then it picked up again. So this confirms, at least at flight level, that they're seeing some gales. And I want to get to the other system here in the Caribbean. Let's go to that one. This would be, let's see, this is Cyclone NOAA 3 Mission 1, Air Force Mission 1. Okay, so this is the one that's in the Caribbean, and it's a finished one, but I don't have, this is all on Tropical Tidbits, by the way. Don't see, it doesn't, I don't see the graphics. The recon graphic doesn't look like it was is posted here, so we'll have to come back to it another time. Meanwhile, here's Genevieve on the Pacific side, and plotted 985. It's back down to tropical storm strength, although there are some hurricane force winds that are going on here. This was as of 2030, so this was at 4:30 this afternoon, so it might still be barely a minimal hurricane, or I know I think they downgraded it to a tropical storm, or were about to downgrade it to a tropical storm. But you can see the wind barbs here in the purple, so those are 64 to 83 knots, and it is offshore of Baja and moving northwestward and moving away. So every once in a while, they don't send recon aircraft to the Pacific storms too often, but maybe they got to burn the money in the budget, so they sent the plane out to take a look at this one.
Right. I'm just trying to. I'm trying to look at something on the chat board, Joe, while you're talking.
Yeah, so Joe monitors the chat board, folks. So if you got questions, throw them on there, and he'll pass them along.
Right now, we're just going back and we've got people on the chat board just going back and forth with stuff that doesn't seem to have anything to do with what we're talking about.
All right, so let's take a look at what the Hurricane Center is doing with this. So this is their forecast, and then we'll look at some of the models to see what they have to say. So the 5 o'clock advisory was at 14.381.0, 35 mile an hour winds, max moving west at 18. Going to make a turn to the northwest. They said the center was relocated a little further south, so they bring it barely onshore in northern Nicaragua and over northeastern Honduras. and then back out into the open waters, only to go back on land over the Yucatan Peninsula sometime late Saturday, and then back out by Sunday afternoon on the other side in the Gulf of Mexico, and then moving northwest from there toward the Texas Louisiana coast. And judging from what I saw in the upper air in terms of the overall pattern, that makes total sense to me.
It does. It
Okay,
does.
it does. All right.
It
You have
does.
no arguments. Nothing to say. No arguments.
No, I know our dear friend Mr. Green is probably going to get rather busy about the beginning of next week if this all pans out.
Well, he needs to drop whatever he's doing and come on our show.
And
All right.
our other friend, which whatever name it happens to get, will be curving away off to the right of this first system.
Correct.
And who knows, as you just mentioned at the top of the show, we may have landfalling tropical cyclones virtually at the same time.
Well, here's the problem with this, and of course, the track forecast has become a little clearer. All the hurricane track model guidance overnight and during today shifted further north. And now, from yesterday, when they had all the models had the system moving across all of the islands the long way, and essentially the reason why the models were not really doing very much with it. But now they've all gone. Those hurricane tracking models have gone north of the islands, and that's important in a case like this because if it stays out over the waters, if the core of this remains completely out over the ocean waters, it will have a chance to strengthen. So this is what the Hurricane Center did with this: is they strengthened it to a tropical storm. And given that conditions are technically look very favorable for strengthening, they do bring it to hurricane strength sometime on Sunday in the Bahamas, touching southernmost Florida near the Keys or just east of the Keys, and then going up into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Yes, exactly. At the same time that you have this, you had you'll have possibly have the other system sitting just southeast of the Texas Louisiana coastline, setting us up for the potential of two tropical cyclones making landfall at the same time.
Which would be amazing.
Right
Of
now,
course,
we
it's 2020. So what other year would possibly have something like this but 2020, right?
2020 exactly. All right, so let's look at why. And I saved a few maps up here from earlier. So this is the icon from overnight, and you see how on the icon model where the system. Now I only have it out here until this was what's 120 was Tuesday, 2 a.m. Tuesday morning, and you can see the one low on the icon was approaching the Louisiana coast, and the other system kind of right along the lines of the way the Hurricane Center has it, just a little bit slower maybe, moving over the Florida Keys and then up the west coast of Florida. So that model certainly argued for the idea that you're going to see this go north of the islands. The GFS. I'm going to get rid of this so this way it doesn't clog up my memory. But I saved the upper air here on the GFS to show you to show everybody that it's all about that Atlantic ridge. We're not worried about any kind of trough dropping down in the Great Lakes like the European had back a few days ago. That doesn't look very likely to happen. But what we do have here is this Atlantic ridge that is built all the way back. Here's your upper high to the north. So it's basically cradling this, and it's going to move. Your winds are your upper air steering winds are going to be from the east until they get to about Florida when they turn to the southeast and south. And so this system, which is represented here on the GFS with something that looks like it's on land, because the GFS on this run was further south and didn't do much with it. But then it kind of curls around. It'll curl around the upper high. Meanwhile, of course, you've got the system coming out of the Caribbean, which is further west. That is responding. There's a trough here in the northern Gulf of Mexico that's going to lift out. And that system, which is this curl you see here, that's further west. That's actually going to do the same kind of thing It's got the high to the east. It's got another big high to the west of it. So it's responding to the weakness. I can't, we get those seasons, Joe, where you do have 2 or 3 storms running around at the same time, but they're usually spread by a lot of distance. But to have them this close is pretty unusual.
Yeah, and you know, Joe, the normally, normally, if the storm is going to be making a track to get north of the islands, north of Puerto Rico, north of the Dominican Republic, north of Cuba, we folks along the Atlantic seaboard usually have to watch that very carefully because usually it takes the turn and tracks up across the Florida Peninsula and then up along the East Coast. But if that ridge holds in, I like the term that you use, cradling, so to speak, these disturbances. Then it will literally force that system that's moving north of the islands into the Gulf of Mexico and not come up the coast. It may give a glancing blow to South Florida, but then it will force it into the Gulf. And of course, in the Gulf, the folks there are already going to having their own problems with the other disturbance. So this is a fantastically odd. There was an announcer in baseball who had been doing baseball games for like 30 or 40 years, and he once made the comment. He said, "You never know in any particular situation, any particular game, that you're going to see something that you've never seen before." And in a way, for forecasters, for meteorologists, that's true too. Because I can't remember seeing something like this
Nope,
in all the years that I've been doing this, and I'm sure you can't either.
nope. Here's the wider view of the jet stream, Joe. We're protected. This can't come up the East Coast because you've got, unlike the others, you have this really strong jet that runs from central Canada southeast into New England. This is for early next week, and then straight across the Atlantic like a ruler to England and Ireland. I mean, that's a fire a late summer fire hose jet that's set up from New England to northern Europe, and therefore we're protected here.
I mean, we saw that during the winter season, didn't we? When we saw those record rapid flights
Yes,
across the Atlantic or whatever. But yeah, in the same token, also, it's kind of like a sandwich effect. You've got that very strong jet stream that's kind of in control and literally trying to force that ridge of high pressure down just to the south. And now you've got these storms trying to come up, northward, and they're not able to do that because not only are they fighting that high pressure ridge, but the ridge itself is fighting that very fast flow across the Northeast and Great Lakes. So yeah, so where else can these systems go but boom into the Gulf of Mexico?
right. And that narrow ridge, by the way, is the way the setup is across the Atlantic is one of the reasons why we have lower than normal pressures. Even the highs are lower than normal in terms of the pressure across the entire Atlantic Ocean, except maybe up in the far northern regions of the Atlantic, up near Greenland and Iceland and up toward the pole, which is why we had that kind of blocky look to things back over the weekend and into the first part of next week. And meanwhile, if you see the kinks in the isobars that in the height lines rather out in the tropical Atlantic, so we've got tropical waves here that are moving along, several of them that'll be moving across, and I'm wondering if any one of them, including the one that just moved off, could wind up developing as that moves westward. So if these two depressions get their names right now. They've got 9 days to break the next two name records and to be the earliest ever. So we will carry it through the M storm to get the earliest L and M storm on record, and potentially have it the first time to have two landfalling cyclones in the U.S. Now, it's not written in stone yet, folks, so don't misunderstand me. It's just this is how everything seems to time out at the moment, and we're still talking about 5 days from now, so there is room for some error here. And looking at the jet stream pattern next week, the systems landfalling, the one that comes in, tropical depression 13, the one that goes to Florida on the guidance that goes to Florida and then goes up the Florida west coast, is going to eventually turn northeastward. But look how strong this jet is next week. There's a trough. There's another one of these deep troughs, but this is one that moves along from James Bay down to the lower to the Gulf states, and that moisture is probably going to get shunted up to the northeast at some point. The GFS was picking up on this idea with a cold front approaching us, so that maybe we'll have some tropical moisture to deal with before that finally just disappears. But this doesn't look to me like it's a setup for something that's going to come up. I'm kind of talking early right now. This doesn't look like something that comes inland and maintains an identity with a low that moves northeastward. It looks like it all just winds up getting absorbed with a frontal boundary. I'm just impressed by how the model has this very strong jet stream going into the last weekend of August and into the first days of September.
We've been talking about this now for the last week. Um, each day, it's a little bit of a different scenario. Each day, we see either a closed low dropping on down into northern New England, or then it flattens out, and then it kind of dips again. Basically, the models have been like red flagging that we are going to have a rather strong, unusually strong jet stream. The only problem is they're having trouble in the overall configuration of exactly what it's going to appear like relative to where we are, whether it's going to be like a trough or a closed low or a very strong zonal flow. But with that kind of flow, Joe, it doesn't seem like we're going to be seeing any kind of threat in the immediate future from any kind of systems that are down south, unless we get a brief interruption and allow some of that moisture to come northward.
Right.
But it doesn't look like it's going to be one of those things where, oh my goodness, we're going to have flood warnings and it's going to be a prolonged. It doesn't look like anything like that.
One of the one big upside, regardless of whether the troughs are deep or not, deeper on some runs, not as deep as others, they are there on every run. And at least from that standpoint, I think it's fair to say that going forward, we're not going to be seeing a big heat ridge building in the eastern part of the United States. Not with this, and with this fast flow, if it winds up verifying like this, it means cold fronts come through here every 3 or 4 days, and I mean, for the odd day that it might get hot or very warm, but we will also have that interrupted by visits from Canada of some dry air masses, and that's a good thing.
Right. It looks like, in fact, on the upper air, it looks like about the middle of next week, we're going to we may have, let's say, dog days, so to speak, for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, but about Wednesday of next week, if this holds through, the next really nice push of dry Canadian air comes in, and looks like we're home free with dry, pleasant weather for the middle and latter part of next week.
Well, fingers, from your lips to God's ears, we can only hope and pray. But very interesting how we've spent the last number of years going into the month of September, where all of a sudden a heat ridge develops in the eastern part of the United States, and we're sitting here waiting until October. In one year, it wasn't until late October, early November that we finally saw that pattern break. Last year, it broke in early October, so at least it broke about 3 or 4 weeks earlier than the year before. But it's been a while since we've had September's around here have over the past, I would say, 10 or more years have seemed more like an extension of summer. But this is one where we're at least for the beginning of the month, we're not seeing that eastern heat ridge pop up, and I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that is how it's going to play going forward.
Well, you mentioned the heat ridge, and as we close out August, I mean, if you now again, do you really want to believe any kind of prog that goes beyond 240 hours, beyond 10 days? But if you do want to look that far out, it seems to me that by the time we get to the beginning of September, there is kind of a heat ridge that tries to build over the Southland, over the southern United States. But at the same time that that's happening, all of a sudden Canada opens up and is
Right.
going to drop a flow of fast moving jet stream winds across the northern tier of the United States. And you've got a very distinct dichotomy between a fast, cool flow across the northern tier of the US and a big ridge of a heat ridge of sorts running all the way from California to the Florida Peninsula. It looks very, very interesting when we get to the beginning of the new month of September if this actually pans out.
By the way, folks, I guess everybody's jumping on tropicaltidbits.com, and you can't blame them, but it's been slowing the loads. I'm running the GFS backwards here, uh, so we can take a look at what it's doing on the surface. And now you see the two tropical systems for Tuesday, the one just south of Louisiana, the other one on the west coast of Florida, which it brings right up the coast. I would not focus. There's a couple of big asterisks here when you look at these models, folks. Is Don't focus on the track and really don't focus on the track and don't focus on the intensity, or don't even focus on the fact that the system is on some runs isn't even there. There's too many things that have to be dealt with, as we said, with regards to the track when it goes where Depression 13 goes over the Leeward Islands, and does it stay north of the big islands of Puerto Rico, the Hispaniola, and Cuba, and doesn't get ripped apart by the mountains. I think that is really the big key to whether we're going to be dealing with something that is a weak system, or does it wind up strengthening into a hurricane along the way. The other one coming out of the Caribbean, I think, probably stands the better chance here of being of developing as it moves northwest and then eventually northward. And then, of course, as we go forward, Joe, there's a weak front that looks like it tries to come through here. I mean, I can see the kink in the isobars for Sunday night into Monday, and then again, later Monday looks like something weak goes by. So I wonder whether we might get just a touch of dew point relief on Tuesday and Wednesday from, say, central New Jersey northward.
I'm in.
Yeah, and then of course,
that.
with the next front that approaches late next week, you see how that tropical moisture goes up. Now this is next Friday, and here we have, here's a stronger cold front that's coming through, that's pushing eastward. And remember, this is where we saw the jet stream, really, drive a trough down pretty far to the south. So the tropical moisture from the tropical depression 13 that comes into Florida winds up getting absorbed in all of this. It really loses its identity, and then it just moves on out. And then, of course, you've got this nice high that comes down into the Great Lakes and builds into the Northeast. And this is for the weekend of the 30th and 31st, which we've talked about it the last couple of days about that weekend. Then that goes out. And if you've got this fast flow, guess what? Here's another front that approaches right around the first days of September that moves on through, or tries to move on through. And yes, take a look up here, everybody. That's snow east of Lake Winnipeg. Okay, with that strong Canadian jet pushing further south, that actually brings some cold air down, and we see the first blues of the season, Joe, on the Canadian side, anyway.
In August.
Yes, no, this is actually September 2nd. The
Wow.
first blue streaks of the season for the snow lovers. Yeah, look at that. It's actually on 18 over a period of 18 hours on the 300 hour and out.
I'm just looking here at the hand-drawn map for day 6, which is next Wednesday, showing, and of course, by then they don't allude to the fact that these could be tropical cyclones, but obviously they are the two systems that we're watching, one making landfall near the Texas Louisiana border, and the other making landfall, looks like right around Tallahassee in the panhandle of Florida, separated, I guess, these two centers by about 300 to 350 miles, making simultaneous landfall early on Wednesday morning of next week if this pans out. So
All right, let's go to some current weather. Another delightful day today. I think you were right in describing today as not only the pick of the week, but probably the pick of the whole summer. It was beautiful today.
can't remember
I
can't
walked
remember a
9
better day.
miles this morning.
Yeah, wow. I can't remember. Well, you know what I did with my beautiful, and so did my lovely wife. We spent the afternoon pulling. Actually, she used the chainsaw,
Of course.
and I use the and I use
The
the
scissors.
loper. That's, yeah, king size scissors or whatever. Um, we have an outbreak here on Rancho Rayo of sumac and kudzu. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, yeah.
this is like and the sumac is virtually, in one case, was like a small tree. and we had to go. She had to go underneath these big bushes and vines just to cut the damn thing down at the bottom, and it was like timber. And then, and I made at least 5 trips with the wheelbarrow into the woods to get rid of this stuff, and then I had to make another 4 or 5 trips with the regular barrel just to get rid of it. But we said we had to do it, and we took advantage of the low humidity and bright sunshine. But even with the bright sunshine and low humidity, after about 2 or 3 hours, it was like, ugh.
Hmm.
And guess what, Joe? We're going to do it again tomorrow.
Lovely. Got a nice high overhead. The dew points were really in good shape today, upper 40s and low 50s in some spots. And
55 here at the 55 here at the house this
I'm
morning at
seeing, I'm
just
seeing,
after 6 a.m.
I don't know what station that is, but I just saw like I see like it looks like a 46 dew point. But that kind of looks a little odd. But there's one just north of you. I don't know if it's Poughkeepsie. It's got a 49 dew point there. But look, bottom line is it was dew points in the low to mid 50s works for me. And temperatures that just barely made it back out of the upper 70s to around 80. So you couldn't ask for anything better. Meanwhile, you've got this stalled wavy frontal boundary that runs through South Carolina and Georgia, and there is some action going on tonight with regards to some thunderstorms there on the radar. They're coming up, this tropical moisture coming out of the Gulf, and we're seeing some showers and storms around the state of Florida, some patchy clusters, patchy thunderstorms, and also some patchy downpours and thunderstorms throughout the state of Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, pushing up northward. Now, the frontal boundary stalled down there, so none of this is coming up our way, but some of some of that higher humidity is going to start moving up the coast. You won't. The dew points are going to come up a little bit tomorrow, but they're not going to go crazy tomorrow. But Saturday and Sunday, those are the 2 days where we'll start to get those dew points back up into the mid 60s and temperatures, I think, in the middle to upper 80s for both days. And I threw in the chance, by the way, that there could be a scattered shower or a thunderstorm on Saturday, but just a couple of isolated ones, and maybe a slightly better chance of some scattered showers or thunderstorms running around later on Sunday. But
Right.
overall, it's a summer weekend.
No question. And that old front you just mentioned that's generating all of that showery, thundery weather over Georgia and into parts of the Carolinas, that's the one that helped to spark our tornado in Middletown, New Jersey yesterday. Or was it a tornado? Did they
You
confirm
know
that?
what? They didn't really say. There was a picture that was running around on the internet, and when I saw it, it looked like it. I don't know if it was photoshopped. It just didn't look. It just didn't look right. And the thing was, I also did not see anybody else. Usually, when there's a tornado, uh, you get at least several different pictures from different people. But this was like the one shot that was running around yesterday. There were no other shots, and I think Mount Holly questioned whether that was a tornado or not. And I haven't seen anything on their website that whether they verified if it was or it wasn't.
Is it was right literally, it was in their jurisdiction. It was not Upton. Although
Yeah,
I
no,
met,
it's Mount Holly. Yeah.
it looked like it was like near the boundary zone between the two weather offices.
A little
And
bit of shower and thunderstorm activity in parts of South Texas that's going on. You can see, by the way, the northern extent of these showers, southern Virginia, North Carolina, into eastern Kentucky and westernmost West Virginia. And out in the southwest, where the upper high has moved a little bit further to the east, you're seeing this rotation, this clockwise rotation of showers and storms around the high. And there's also seeing a little bit of moisture there up in the northern parts of Baja California. Genevieve is out of the range of the U.S. view, of course, and you see some scattered showers off the coast of Southern California, and a few showers and a couple of isolated thunderstorms developing inland there north of San Francisco. A little action up in the Pacific Northwest, a little bit of action up in the northern plains. And the Storm Prediction Center, by the way, today, the stuff in the southeast, and then up the eastern parts of Colorado into Montana and into the Dakotas, you've got marginal risk of severe weather in southern Arizona. Oh, it's decided to update while I was on there. That's for tomorrow. That's for today. I'm sorry, and tonight. For tomorrow, we've got a marginal risk up in upstate New York, way up, Joe, northern New Hampshire, northern Vermont, and Maine. under a marginal risk. Also, Alabama, southern Georgia, and Florida, and Minnesota and the eastern Dakotas to northwestern Wisconsin. This is for Friday into Saturday. And then on Saturday, the Storm Prediction Center is showing marginal risk over Wisconsin and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan back to southern Minnesota and Iowa, and also marginal risk up in upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, with general thunderstorms everywhere else.
I should point out, Joe, that I just did a little checking myself, and it was confirmed. The National Weather Service did confirm that a tornado touched down in Middletown. Um, According to what I'm looking at here, Lincroft residents were positive the high winds and tree damage they witnessed was a tornado. And after the National Weather Service investigated, it turns out that they were right. However, although it was an actual tornado that touched down on the campus baseball diamond just before 10 a.m., it continued on a 1.2-mile path of destruction. They said that it lasted all of 2 minutes from 9:57 to 9:59 yesterday morning. Maximum wind speed 80 miles an hour, a path of 70 yards, and a path length of 1.2 miles. So it was a little bitty tornado, but it was a tornado according to the National Weather Service.
Uh, Johnny Quest poses this question with regards to two systems in the Gulf of Mexico. His question is it possible that both systems in the Atlantic end up in the Gulf? And I think the answer to that is yes, it is possible. And at the same time, and would that cause both systems to be close to each other and one winds up, uh, I would say one would wind up absorbing the other. And sometimes that does happen where you have it actually, most of the time, it usually happens where the stronger system absorbs the weaker one. But we had an instance back a few years ago with Hurricane Matthew and the end storm, which I think was Nicole. And it wound up, that was one of the odd times. Now, this is when Matthew was in its weakening phase, but initially it looked like Matthew would absorb the Nicole, but it wound up the other way around, and eventually Nicole wound up absorbing Matthew. So I know that sounds a little racy, but you know, but that's just how it works. Now, what could also happen is if both systems have equal strength and there's a fair amount of distance between them, they could wind up. You get like what's called the Fujiwara effect, which is
Fujiwara
right,
effect.
which is sort of like if you spin two tops and those tops spin and they get close to each other, they wind up repelling each other at some point and they go to the
Kind of like a
opposite
dozy,
direction.
kind of like a dozy do, right?
Yes. So, yeah, I mean, the models are not really indicating that one is going to absorb the other because uh, it looks like one is up near the Gulf Coast, the other one is just coming into the eastern Gulf of Mexico on the same day. So they are a good 400 plus miles apart. So that's a fair amount of distance that they could maintain their own identities.
Right.
But we'll have to. What we don't know is the extent of the circulations of both of those systems. Are they going to be? Is one of them going to be a system that has a big circulation? Is one of them going to be? Or are they going to be two systems that have small circulations where they can maintain their identities? So for now, I think we can just kind of treat them that they're both going to be able to exist at the same time. If it looks as we get closer, maybe that will change. We'll just have to see what models show us or tell us down the road. Scott Briller, it's September 5th, 1933. A Category 3 hurricane went to Brownsville at midnight, and at the same time, a tropical storm was entering Cedar Key, Florida. So it's on the surface, it's almost the same thing.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
look, that's kind of how it looks like. You got one up near the coast of southeast Texas and or western Louisiana, and the other one just coming into the west coast of Florida. So they almost look like, in terms of what they look like on the maps, it's almost the same setup again. Very odd.
It is kind of amazing. So we're talking about something that has not happened in about 87 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
and there's no other instance of having both on the same day. I mean, we've had tropical storms at the same time, several, where they've made landfalls on different days. But to have them on the same day, I would have thought that maybe it would have happened more often because you could have a landfall, let's say, off the North Carolina coast, and then maybe have something in the western Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
We've also seen the landfalls a day or two apart. I don't remember. I don't. I don't remember for the U.S. mainland anyway. I don't remember an instance of having two sets of tropical storm warnings or two sets of hurricane warnings going on at the same time.
I don't either.
Yeah, I
I
mean
did.
we've had it where they're in the islands maybe and in the mainland of the U.S., but not on the mainland for two on the same day. Yeah, that would be that would be very interesting.
So
If
what we're talking about, the time frame that we would be looking for a possible double landfall might be as
Tuesday,
soon as, let's say, Tuesday night, or
yeah,
maybe holding off until the early Wednesday of next week.
yeah, yeah, somewhere in that 24-hour span. I think I think that's where that from what we're seeing at the moment. I think that makes the most sense. So, Mr.
And Frank Toko 4 on the chat board says never had two hurricanes in Gulf at same time. And again, that's a interesting point. But maybe one will be a hurricane, the other will be a tropical storm. I don't know. It's too early to to determine
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it's going to be a real challenge over the next couple of days to see how this all plays out. And I would emphasize if you're watching from home, if you're you live in the affected areas, be it if you're in coastal Florida, west and east coast, or if you're along the Gulf Coast. I mean, certainly that when the antenna go up when tropical systems are around. So that's kind of where we are at this point. There's always a lot of uncertainty, and I think in this particular instance, the uncertainty is at a little bit of a higher level for both of the systems. And of course, the
Right.
folks that are watching from the islands, from the Leeward Islands on eastward, being scarred by Category 5 hurricanes in one form or another over the last 3 or 4 years, be it Maria or Irma or Dorian in the Bahamas. So I'm sure their antenna are up in a big way, so and rightfully so. So you've got your tropical storm warnings that are up for the Leeward Islands, for Puerto Rico, and for the Virgin Islands, the tropical storm watch. I'm sorry, and we've got tropical storm warnings up for parts of Honduras and Nicaragua, and we'll see where that goes as it winds up heading further north. So I don't think I have. Scott's doing a. Scott is doing COVID runs today, so I think we're paused on Briller Jeopardy. I don't have any questions. I know he's working on something for tomorrow with regards to how well we know I Love Lucy. So that ought
I'm
to.
very upset.
That,
I'm
that,
very upset. One of my all-time favorite. See, this is the I don't understand why MeTV is putting what has to be one of the all-time great television shows on at 6:30 in the morning. And I meant to wake up this morning because this morning, Joe, one of my favorite episodes, and maybe one of yours, of I Love Lucy, George Reeves, Superman, visits Susan
yes,
Devon.
yes, and they call me Superman. That was a great line.
And I've always wondered, Joe, and you've seen this, I know, innumerable times, when Ricky is prepping the kids and he tells, little Ricky says, "You're going to get your wish, young man. Here it is, your all-time favorite TV show
Right.
personality." And the way George Reeves makes his entrance, he comes through the what are those
The
those
kitchen,
doors.
the folding doors that separate the kitchen from the living room. Yeah.
Right. But the way he comes through feet first,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm saying to myself, did they set that up in the studio? I always thought that when Superman or George Reeves made that kind of an entry, that they put him on like a sliding pond, so to speak, and he just like literally slid down.
Well, George Reeves was known, by the way, for being in very good physical condition.
Right.
So it's quite possible that he did that on his own. I've never really closely paid attention to that shot, so I have to take a look at that and see if I can figure it out. I never read. having read stories about how the show was produced, I've never read anything that said that they put George Reeves on a slide to come in through
There's
those
actually a movie, I think
doors,
it's called
the window.
Hollywoodland. You've never seen that?
I've heard it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, in one part of that movie, supposedly George Reeves was being, I think it was Ben Affleck was playing George Reeves, and he was suspended by some wire, making believe he was flying, and the wire broke, and he fell like literally, bam,
Right.
right to the ground, stomach first, or whatever. But I always wondered about that. And the best part of that I Love Lucy episode was when Lucy's out on the ledge, and Fred and Ricky are trying to move the piano,
Right.
and and little Ricky says, "No, Daddy, let Superman do it." And George Reeves says, "If you will."
Right. The George Reeves was he was in Gone with the Wind. He had a
Right.
small role in Gone with the Wind. He was one of the twins, I believe, that was trying to impress Vivian Lee, Miss Scarlet, at the very beginning of the movie. He was also in From Here to Eternity with Montgomery Clift and Deborah Kerr and
Right.
um, Frank Sinatra and Ernest Borgnine in that movie. Also in that movie and From Here to Eternity was Phil Ober. And Phil Ober was married to Vivian Vance
Right.
at the time.
Right.
And Phil Ober did several Perry Mason episodes too.
And of course, he played Dory Sherry because Dory
And
Sherry
he
is one.
was Dory Sherry. Yes, he was Dory. Yes.
But I wish they would have that show. I wish they had Isle of Lucy on, and a more even if it was like 7 or 7:30, I could have made it. But 6:30, I guess I just couldn't get up out of bed to turn on the TV and watch.
Well, there's another cable channel like MTV. I think it's called FTV or FMTV, and I know they have Perry Mason on that 7 days a week. They have
Right.
it on like 3 times a day during the week, and then twice on the weekends. Because MeTV does not have Perry Mason on the weekend, and then I have, but I DVR the weekday episodes, so I watch them
We
during the
need
weekend.
our Perry Mason fix. By the way, the nighttime version of Perry Mason, the one that's on at 11:30 at night, they're now into season 9. I was trying to figure out mentally when they were going to get to the 21st episode of season 9, which is the Lone Color episode. I think sometime in mid-September we'll
The
get to
only
that.
thing, the one thing I will say with regards to that, the show changed to a certain extent. I, from how it was shot and done during the beginning to how it was shot and done during the end. I actually do prefer the earlier episodes. You got toward the latter part of the season, and they did things that they did in the '60s, and they put '60s music, that fake rock and roll music in the background sometimes, and I just I couldn't. To be honest, I really don't like that.
Yeah.
The earlier Perry Mason episodes were much more film noirish, and I enjoy that. And also the color episode, um, does it doesn't work. It doesn't work like the black and whites do.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's the same characters, but I guess you're so used to seeing it. It's like when they colorized some of these shows that were all done in black and white. They just look totally. It doesn't look right. I do not like watching shows that were shot in black and white that have been colorized. I just won't watch them in color.
What's going on lately with the arguments about the post office, and I was looking for that one particular scene in Miracle on 34th Street, where Mr. Daly, the lawyer, is reading out of the World Almanac all the statistics about the United States Postal Service. I found the clip on YouTube, but that clip was colorized. And I said, "Oh God, I
Oh
can't
no,
do it.
yeah, that just ruins it. It
I
just
can't
ruins
do it."
it.
Yeah,
I don't know why somebody decided back when they came up with the colorizing technique that they would take all these black and white movies and make them in color, and then people will start watching them again.
I think it was Ted Turner.
No, yeah,
Ted Turner.
no, that was. I mean, look, he rectified it. He made up for his that horrible error, but with Turner Classic Movies, which is a wonderful channel. I mean, I just watch it all the time. So you'll never see colorized movies on there.
But you can never. I mean, on MeTV, for example, on Sundays they have like 4 hours of Gilligan's Island, And I used to like to watch on occasion the early episodes that were in black and white. Can't do that anymore. Why? Ted Turner decided to make them all color. Why? I
Uh,
don't know. I don't know why. So
all right. So just really quick, I'm just checking to see if the 8 o'clock advisories are up. So the Hurricane Center on Tropical Depression 13 says initial reports from a NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft indicate that the depression is not well organized. And it's at 17 north and 55.5 west. Top winds are 35 miles an hour, moving west northwest at 21. On Tropical Depression 14 in the Caribbean, depression showing signs, as our satellite indicates, as we showed earlier, showing signs of getting better organized and expected to become a tropical storm on Friday. That is at 14.7, 81.7, wind moving west at 17, lowest pressure 1,007 millibars, and top winds there 35 miles an hour. There's that interactive double map. I got that here. The wind speed probabilities.
right,
Yeah,
right.
here it is, folks. I'm just going to bring it back up on the screen so you can see. Joe mentioned this at the beginning of the show tonight because you don't really see this very often. The two storms and their respective wind, tropical storm force wind probabilities, and how they sort of merge together to an extent in when they're both over Florida, when one is over Florida and the other one in the central and northwestern Gulf of Mexico. That's an odd map. That is a very odd map indeed.
And if you look on if you go back to tropical tidbits and you look at the 500 millibar wind field, you see that down in the Gulf of Mexico, that whole area is shaded in deep shades of blue, indicating falling pressures. But you don't see that usually at this time of the year.
You're talking about the which map are we talking about?
The
Which
500
parameter?
millibar like height anomalies.
Well, height anomalies or the pressure anomalies?
The no, I think it's the height anomalies, Joe.
All right, so let's take a look. Hold on. I'll bring it up. Let me
But I mean,
find it.
you see a trough down there in the Gulf coastal area, and it's like you see the contours of blue. One particular contour, a very deep shade of blue, indicating um, falling heights. And I mean, like you don't see that usually
No.
uh, down there.
So this
The
is all right. Let me bring this up on the screen. I've got now this is 384 hours where there's a huge high. There's a 1034 high north of over the St. Lawrence River.
No, I'm talking about like right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. No. I'm rolling back. I just got to wait for this to load. They are all slow to load. Let's try this one. The circle of death goes round and round and round. I think everybody's trying to get in at the same time. I don't know why. There's no new guidance here.
They're watching. They're
Well,
watching.
this is just from the standpoint of this map of the surface pressure, Joe, for tomorrow morning. I mean, the whole area from the Rockies eastward has below normal pressures, and we talked about how we showed the maps the last couple of days about how the pressures are low all across the Atlantic Ocean. And I'm just going to roll it forward. See that darker blue? This is the surface pressure. Then I'll switch over to I'll get it to where both storms are in the Gulf. Come on.
I know. I'm not talking about the mean sea level pressure anomaly.
Right.
I'm
No,
talking
no.
about
I'm going to switch now.
500 heights, and it's crazy. It really
Well, I
is.
mean, yeah, there's some below normal heights with the system in the Western Gulf, and then slightly below normal with the one along the Florida coast. Now we do have that deep trough that's there right now. So you see that big area of blue.
Right.
That's it. There it is. So this is from the trough that's hanging there now. Look at that. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Look, you don't see you don't really see this very often where you have the jet stream so far south, and of course we already had with the storm that moved up the coast, you had this full latitude trough that set up from the Great Lakes down to the Gulf states. Another one of these anomalous troughs, which is the reason why Isaias was able to do what it did when it moved up the East Coast. So usually Joe and I take Friday and Saturday off. But I'm thinking that we could take this one day at a time. So I don't know if you've got something to do tomorrow, but I think I'm free, so we can have a Friday night Joe and Joe weather show, and then we can figure out whether we'll do a Saturday Joe and Joe weather show tomorrow.
No, we'll see. We'll see. I'm in, as I said, I'm in CMAC in Kudzu City tomorrow.
All
So
right. So, but you're tentatively okay for tomorrow.
yes.
Okay. All right. So there you go, folks. We will be here live tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern time, and of course, keeping an eye on the developments in the tropics. Be sure to use the National Hurricane Center website, nhc.noaa.gov, or your local National Weather Service forecast office page over the next couple of coming days with regards to these tropical systems. Because Joe and I can talk about these things, but as far as if it comes down to where you need information regarding decisions you may or may not have to make, you want to go to your local National Weather Service office or the Hurricane Center website pages. So it's weather.gov for the Weather Service and nhc.noaa.gov for the National Hurricane Center. All right, so we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great
We'll be
night.
here.
Take care.
Au reservoir.